Hi there and welcome back to ATIDS. Today I will see a very interesting effect. What I have here is I have a new project open. I have an audio file here. So let me go ahead and create a new comp, and make sure you keep in mind the frame rate of the current composition and click OK. And let's make it 1280 by 720. You can choose any size you want, doesn't matter. And let me drag this audio file to here, and now let me create a new solid, make it comp size, okay, and drag the audio spectrum and change the inside color to white and the outside color to white too. And now change the display options to analog lines. Now make sure you change the audio layer to the audio file you want. Now you see you kind of get real, it's somewhat audio going on here, but you want to make it a little bit intense. Now you see more what do you say, more height in the frequency. Decrease the start frequency to 1. Actually offset this a little bit. Yeah. Now you see that the audio is the spectrum is reacting to the audio. Increase the height a little bit. Yeah, that should be fine. And yep. And make sure increase the audio duration a little bit to 150, around 150, so that the spectrum stays there for a little bit. It's not that spontaneous. Okay, now make it a 3D layer and decrease the opacity to 50%. Just purely optional. It just makes it look good. And now create a new comp. And then go to project, go to comp 1, drag and drop the comp 1. And collapse the transformations and make a 3D layer. Now create a new camera. You can enable, we will see the depth of field later on, so click OK, put it in the bottom. Now if you change the camera, you see that the spectrum area is also changing. It's pretty good. If you zoom in, you don't see it's pretty good actually. You don't see any, what do you say, this de-interlacing or whatever. It's just because it's at 50% here, but when you zoom in, it's pretty normal. So keep that in mind. And so let's right click on this, go to time, enable time remapping, and by default time remapping inserts 2 keyframes, one in the beginning and one at the end. So delete the second one, and now I'll click on time remap. You kind of want a delay because we duplicate the number of layers, and you kind of want the delay between the layers. So put in time minus index minus 1. You don't want the delay to be on the first layer, so index minus 1 starts from the second layer. The expressions actually comes into effect for the second layer. Time minus index minus 1 divided by the frame rate. It's 25. You have to keep in mind the frame rate of the composition, and instead of 25, replace it with the frame rate of your composition. And now when you duplicate this, it duplicates, but you still see everything in the same what do you say, same position. Actually, you gotta offset it along the z-axis to make it a nice spectrum, a 3-dimensional spectrum. So remove the 2 duplicated ones and click on the click P on the keyboard so you get the position, and I'll click on this. Now let's create a new variable called z, and in the same way index minus 1, so it offsets along the z-axis by 10 pixels for every new layer. And now add it to the current value 0, 0, z. Okay, now when you duplicate this, you see a really nice spectrum going on. Let me just actually switch to OpenGL so that it's kind of a little bit spontaneous. Now this is really beautiful right now, but now if you see here, initially, let me just zoom in. Initially, the spectrum starts producing here. Initially, they have the same audio spectrum here, and now, when the new audio reactions come on, the spectrum starts reacting here, and then the spectrum actually keeps on going until it actually dies at the end. So that's how we actually do it. This is the key. Now make sure you select all these layers, no matter how many things you duplicated, and make sure you disable the audio and add the audio layer later on, because when you have these many layers with audio on, they overlap and creates a very bad sound, sound effect, which we don't want. So keep that in mind. And now let's actually see how to make make it more solid. And this is just a nice line spectrum. You can actually go back to comp 1 and here add some colors here, say green, and actually that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good actually. When you play it, it's really beautiful, and you can interact with 3D, and you can add depth of field and some nice settings going on. But let me just zoom out this a little bit so you get more view. That looks great, but you can add like color spectrum, like say make it a little bit pink, and add the dynamic hue to it. Blend the colors. Now you see a really colorful spectrum, and it looks really nice. Now this is how you actually do the line spectrum in the video. And now let's actually see how to create the big solid white spectrum you actually see in the beginning of the video. Let's make it to 0 again. Let's put it back to 0, and let's make this white. And now this is a little bit tricky here. Make sure you put it digital and increase the frequency bands all the way to, this is going to be such a huge render hog, but trust me, it's worth it. So, and go back to comp 2. Now you see it takes a while to render, but meanwhile it doesn't look good yet, don't worry. So meanwhile, select everything except first layer and remove them, so you have only one thing going on. And go back to the transparency here and make it to full 100%. Now go to the black solid here, and go to the digital options, and make sure the cast shadows is on. By default it's off, make sure it's on. Now create a new comp and just import this thing here, and as you can see you have a pretty, pretty intense waveform going on here. Now let me just offset it back to its initial position. So by default you get nothing. Yeah, it works fine. Now here, now you have a spectrum which looks like a solid layer. Now make sure you switch on 3D and collapse its transformations. Now create a new camera the same way we did before, and now adjust its position like that, something like that. It's up to you. And now make sure it's under the comp one and create a new light. Now make sure it's white. Increase the intensity, say 150%, and make sure it's spotlight and click OK. Now let's select the handle. And for the time being, let me switch to OpenGL again, so it's really fast. And what you can do is actually go to transform, and the point of interest, you can just lock it to the center, so no matter where you move, it always focuses to the center. So the center of this comp is 340, 640, 360, and 0. So yeah, it always stays in the center. It's great so far. Now in the same way, let's insert the expressions. Let's go to position, value, and this time let's offset it only by 5 pixels instead of 10 pixels like we did before. So value plus 0, 0, index -1. We always use index -1 so that the first layer is not affected by the expression, into 5. Okay. Now duplicate this. Actually, I forgot the time remapping. Make sure you enable the time remapping and delete the last keyframe, and I'll click on this, and time minus index -1 by 25, the frame rate of the composition. Now if you duplicate this, let's go back to the initial state. Yep. Now say we have 27 layers, and duplicate this one more time. So I'm not gonna duplicate a bunch of layers, I'm gonna just leave it like this. Actually, you know, let me just delete this. Yeah, because it actually affects the speed a lot. It looks kind of weird because we have OpenGL on. Let me just switch off this so you actually know how it looks without the OpenGL on. So this is how it looks with OpenGL on, with OpenGL off. It looks really clean. Let's see how to do the settings and light settings and all. So for the time being, I'll switch back to OpenGL because speed is important to us. And now let's go back to light 1. Go to light options and increase the shadow diffusion a little bit more so the shadows look a little bit spread out. And go to make sure you select all the comps and go to diffusion. Increase the diffusion a little bit more so the light is more kind of more diffuses a little bit more. And now let's switch back to the real real view instead of OpenGL. Now you see it looks really nice, especially with the light diffusion going on here. It looks pretty good, but what if you want depth of field, so that you know you want to once again, I'm not using many layers here just to speed up the render a little bit, but you can use as many layers as you want to create. It has an amazing look. So to create a new depth of field, let me go to the camera and enable depth of field. Now depth of field can be a little bit tricky, which we'll see in a minute. Now if you see the depth of field is kind of too much in the edges, just because we have the blur level at like 170 something, so let's put it back to like 80 something, so you get a really subtle depth of field. And also make sure you lock the camera point of interest at the center of the composition. Now you have a subtle depth of field here, and if you want to like animate the camera, make sure you log the point of interest by the center. See, by 640, 360, and 0. So that really helps you to animate the camera with the depth of field. Otherwise it gets a little bit messy and the depth of field kind of goes off the screen a little bit. So in this way, if you actually animate the camera, you still have the depth of field at the edges, but not the center of, you know, the composition or something. So this is how I actually did the effect. It's pretty easy, straightforward, nothing complicated at all. If you actually want to have more control on the, you know, what do you say, more control with the time iterations or time delay and all, Nicholas on AE Tuts, he has an amazing tutorial, which actually I was so surprised. It is such a beautiful tutorial where he deals with this iteration. It's actually very similar, but it's actually not based on what do you say, it actually has much more than the audio spectrum. It also uses audio spectrum, but it's quite, you know, different from what we did. Check this out, it's pretty cool. That's pretty much what it did for my piece. You can actually change the shape of the spectrum with using mask, because audio spectrum actually it uses mask too. You can actually use the path tool, so you can actually create a nice mask and it looks the same way. You can create a lot of different effects with this, but keep in mind, if the render takes too long, make sure you render this movie out and import the movie and, you know, do the spectrum. So that's pretty much for today. Have a great day and hope you learned something from it. It's not that complicated, but it's pretty easy and straightforward. Alright, have a great day.